Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to thank and pay our respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sero Boost, the Happiness Science Insights podcast, produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Ngo, coming to your ears from Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. Let's learn together. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Sero Boost, the show where we talk about all things happiness. And lately, we've been talking quite a bit about romantic relationships because it's such a big part of our lives, isn't it? So today, we are exploring yet another angle about romantic relationships and partnership. And my guest of the day today has some really interesting insights. I was having a quick chat with her earlier before we started, and I'm keen to know what we're going to talk about in this conversation. Today, we're going to talk about understanding the dynamics of romantic relationships and how it affects happiness. And today, in the virtual studio, I have Emmy Hernandez with me. She is an executive level love and relationship coach, international speaker, workshop facilitator, and author. Emmy works with women and couples who are committed to co-create an epic, passionate, and fulfilling romantic partnership. Thanks so much for joining us today, Emmy. How are you?
Hello, Lou. I'm phenomenal. Thank you so much for having me on the show. Super excited to be here.
Yeah. Me too. I'm so excited because I think you have some new things that you're going to add to the table because this topic, we've explored it from a few different angles and I feel like everyone knows a thing or two about it. But to explore it with you, I think it would be really fun, especially because you've had so much experience working with women and couples. And I would love to invite you to talk a bit more about yourself because, I'm curious, how did you get to do the work that you're doing? Because it's such a niche thing to do. And, it's kind of like, it's fun, but I bet it's going to be really challenging. So I wonder how you got here and what's the best part of your job?
Yeah, this is one of those things where it's going to sound cliche, but I didn't choose this work. The work chose me. And it all started, I'll give you the quick version. The quickie version is I was an executive in Silicon Valley and I had a pretty amazing career and I traveled all over the world and I was a speaker on stage and I got a lot of attention from men and I went on a lot of dates, but there was just something missing in my love life where I wasn't quite actually getting the attention from the men that I wanted and I just couldn't figure out how to be in a healthy relationship. And I had figured out everything else in my life. And then I realized in the other areas that I had been successful, I had training. So somehow in my love life, I had zero training, which is pretty normal for most of us on the planet. And I realized if I wanted success in love, I needed to go to the experts. So I hired some experts and I learned everything that was coming up for me that were patterns of past trauma and things that had been passed down in my DNA, just how it's passed down for all of us. And once I reset that and created a new net neutral nervous system, I was able to actually create a frequency that called in healthy people to my life. And then 6 years ago, I met the love of my life and married to him. And we live in a beautiful life where we cherish each other every single day. So that's the short version.
Oh, that is such a beautiful story. I really love that because, when you said you didn't choose the work chose you, I think it means a lot because a lot of us, I think we're always kind of doing things, going through lives, and then something happens and then we're like, you know what, I actually want to do that.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's like so interesting. And then the other part of the story that was also really interesting to me is like you talk about your love life. And I think we don't talk about that enough, openly in the public space because I feel like there's a certain level of shyness or, sometimes even shame when it comes to talking about trauma or things that didn't work out. And I feel like it's just so important to talk about it, right? Because it's not about like having everything perfect from the get-go because just like you were saying, you were successful in so many aspects in life apart from that until you figured out, you know what, you needed some training. And I'm so happy to hear that you found the love of your life. Actually, if we have more time, would love to hear about how that happened.
Yeah.
And, if possible, I would love for you to mention, maybe relate to that experience while we're doing the interview part of this conversation, where we really talk about the different aspects of, whether it be communication, power dynamics, finding and nurturing relationships so we can nurture our happiness. But before we do that, we have a very fun section where we want to get to know you a bit better and get some recommendations from you. And it's called Have You Met Emmy? So are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay, this is my favorite part of the show because I get to know my guests better and I have so many things to add on to my list. The first thing I always ask is, what is a book you would recommend?
So since we're on the topic of happiness, one of my favorite books that I love to recommend to all my clients is Change Your Brain, Change Your Life by Dr. Daniel Amen.
I think I've seen that before, but I just have not got the chance to get it. So I will, because I'm on a reading train right now. Like I'm really just like, I'm in the mood where I'm like, if I'm not doing something, I'll read. So yeah, I'll definitely do that. Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. Really, really good one. How about a movie you recommend?
The Secret.
I don't think I've heard about that before.
No, it's actually the writer is from Australia, I believe. I believe he's Australian, but there's a book that came out, The Secret, and then turned into a movie, or the other way around. I don't know which way. And it talks about the law of attraction and how it works with quantum physics.
That is interesting, to say the least. That's very interesting. Quantum physics. Wow. All I can think about is Quantum Mania from Marvel, but that's another story.
They go hand in hand.
It's another story. Anyway, so you're our podcast guest of the day, but I wonder which podcast you listen to the most.
We Should All Be Millionaires with Rachel Rodgers.
Ooh, that's a good one. Thank you for that. I forgot about that. So my next question is, who's your famous role model?
Michelle Obama.
Love that. And final question, what is a course you've completed that you really love?
Oh my God, this one was really difficult because I have so many. One of the most recent ones that people would be familiar with is I am certified as the practitioner in NLP, neuro-linguistics programming. I'll say that.
That's, yeah.
I'm certified in NLP, neuro-linguistics programming.
Wow. That's my first time hearing about that program on this show. And yeah, I think that's going to be an interesting skill to have for sure. So thank you for sharing. So I think now we've got to know you a bit better. We've got 5 things from you, some of them recommendations, some of them just to get to know you a bit better. And with that, let's talk about the topic of today, because we are talking about a very big one, especially as you talked about earlier, right? Like you could be successful in a lot of different areas in life, but in this particular one, people probably wouldn't think that you need training in it. The relationships aspect in life. And who would have thought that you actually need training to have to develop healthy, happy relationships and actually to improve your level of happiness in life? So let's talk about happiness, and then we'll talk about the relationships aspect of it. So all of my guests have very different definitions when it comes to happiness. So I wonder, to you, Emmy, what does happiness mean?
Happiness to me, if I were to put it into a little capsule of definition, is when your beliefs are in complete integrity with your desires in life. And what does that mean, right? So someone might believe that someone who is very rich and very wealthy and lives on an island, and they actually do live on an island, and that their belief and their lifestyle are matching, right? But someone who believes that they should have more wealth and more money, but don't have that wealth and money, and are then upset with those that have it and are living a different lifestyle, there's going to be a cognitive dissonance, right? So your beliefs and your desires have to be matching, or at least when you are progress towards those desires. So every time there's progress towards a desire, that gap, that little level of tension is actually the happiness gap. that the progress towards the desire is being fulfilled. When we have a certain belief of how we should live life and our desires are not being fulfilled or progress towards that, that is true misery and hell on earth.
Wow, that hits really hard, I think, because it's like a nice reminder, like this definition. I think it's kind of similar to some of the definitions that I've heard before, but it's a really good reminder to all of us, because I think a lot of the times you don't think about what you want to achieve in life versus what you're actually doing. Because things happen, you go through trauma, you go through difficulties, you get busy with work, you get busy with life, and you forget. And I think that reminds me of this story of my friend who really wants to live in New York. She has this zest for traveling. She wants to live all over the world, and I think it's interesting to think about how much her life's changed. Because like recently, I don't know if it is the relationship that she's in, the nature of it, or whether it be because of a change in her thinking because of what she just went through recently with her professional career. But all of a sudden, she stopped talking about New York. And then she started talking about it again, but she said it's really hard. It's extremely hard to move there. I don't think it's possible, but I still want to go. So it's kind of like, that person is navigating this challenge to still want to do what they want to do. And I truly believe that, if she goes for it, there's so much going for her because, she's an amazing model, outside of work, she could do ballet and, so much can happen when she's in New York, right? If she builds a network and meet the right people and things like that. So I couldn't help but think, it crosses my mind from time to time, like if that's the life that she really wants to have, I'm pretty sure there's something she can do about it to boost her happiness. It's not to say that she's not happy right now, but things like that just crosses your mind from time to time. It's kind of interesting to see from another perspective, and then it also get me to think about my life as well. What am I saying and not doing? Right? It's kind of like your reminder to me. Like I need to think long and hard about that after today, and that got me to think about some of the misconceptions. People get so many things wrong about happiness, and just like you were saying, sometimes maybe I'm not doing what I wanted to do because I get sucked into other things and I have my bad habits, my tendencies that I need to unlearn and undo. But I'm pretty sure there are also other kinds of misconception when it comes to happiness too. So you've worked with so many different people. You've got a long career. You've seen so many things. I wonder what are some of the biggest misconceptions you've noticed that people get when it comes to happiness?
Oh, since we're on happiness and relationships today, this is my favorite part. My favorite part and the biggest misconception is that your partner is supposed to make you happy, that your significant other is supposed to make you happy. And that cannot be more wrong. We can only make ourselves happy. Okay? Our partners can only magnify. They cannot make us happy.
Yeah, I really love that. I think I've talked about this quite a bit with, my friends and other people that I've got the chance to talk to. And I have some friends who have never been single ever since they were, in their teenage years. And I find that to be an interesting thing because I've always been single. I would say like most of my adult life, I've been single. And I find that to be a very interesting journey. Like I get to know who I am. I get to explore the happiness aspect that comes from within. And I wonder how it works for people that are always in relationship. How do they know about themselves? That's something that I find interesting. So totally agree with you there.
Yeah. Well, short answer to that is I don't think it was even a question from you, but I'll turn it into a question. Is they don't know who they are, right? So either extreme is a pattern. Everything we do as humans is a pattern. So we can go into more details on that as we move forward in this. But every extreme is neither good nor bad. We need to find a balance on what I call a spectrum. So there is a happiness spectrum and there's also a frequency spectrum on the masculine and feminine energy. And we can talk more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely touch on that very soon. But since today's topic is about the dynamics of romantic relationships, let's start with that. So what would be some of the common patterns or dynamics in romantic relationships that can lead to unhappiness? and how can individuals work through them? Since we're talking about happiness, right? So let's talk about the things that could go wrong, so we keep an eye out for them.
Yes. So there are a lot of things that can go wrong in relationships. And there are two separate parts to this. So the first part is most people don't know how to pick the right partner. Okay. So most people pick the wrong partner in the first place. And by wrong, I don't mean as in they were wrong to fall in love. That's not ever what's wrong. Is what I mean by wrong is that very quickly the relationship dissolves into disaster, because when we have trauma and we don't reset our nervous system, okay, so we need to reset our nervous system. Our brain is different from our nervous system. They're attached, but they're different. So what happens is, let's say, for example, someone grew up with a lot of cruelty and abuse in their family. Maybe it wasn't physical, but a lot of verbal abuse, even a lot of pressure from parents will create this need for someone to be perfect. So what happens is, as we get older, that pattern is now instilled, because guess what? You're alive, and your ego, its only job is to keep you alive. So if you continue to try to be perfect, even though you're stressed all the time, your ego says, let's keep doing that because you're still alive. So what happens is you will then find someone that feels like home. And what does that mean? Someone that is familiar, that feels like home. If you grew up with that amount of pressure at home from your parents, guess what? Now you're going to have someone that is your lover who's constantly criticizing you. Why? To help make you feel better. And that's all a perception in your head. But now that it's romantic, you're going to constantly feel like you're not good enough. And that is a recipe for disaster, because there's no way that you can be happy. So there might be a chemical attraction at first. And the chemical attraction happens when two people meet, if it's sexual, even if it's intellectual, will only last about 90 days. That's it. The chemical, serotonin, oxytocin boost will only last 90 days. So after those 90 days, if people commit too soon, too fast, they can then fall in love, but be in love with someone who is their biggest bully.
That's so dangerous.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't think about that, but I guess it's definitely something to think about, for any of us who is, about to, go out into the world of dating, or is already in a relationship, because sometimes people don't even realize it. I actually had a really lovely chat with my girlfriends yesterday, and we had a long chat about the different relationships that they notice in their friends. And this is exactly what it is. I think it goes back to a lot of trauma, but both of my friends yesterday were talking about the separate stories, and the separate stories have a very common theme. These girls are with the wrong people, with the wrong guys, but they just cannot let go. They know that it's wrong for them. These people are wrong for them. The relationships are not working out for them, yet they stay.
Yeah. Welcome to
I
my
think
world.
it's like a it's like a psychological thing that we really need to unpack here, right? Because I feel like it's easier said than done. I would say that, because we are probably 99% of the time not conscious of our tendencies or what's actually going on. It's probably easier for someone from the outside to look at the situation and tell us exactly what it is, because you're in a relationship, you have this rose tinted glass on, this lens of everything is great, and sometimes you even protect the person. And that's what I find with one of the stories that we were talking about yesterday, because it sounded to me like the girl in that relationship was trying to protect her partner in front of her friends without telling the actual truth. Because if we looked at the different the little details here and there was definitely something that was iffy about this guy that she was dating. But she was talking great things about him and directed all the problems towards her. And I feel like this is such a dangerous thing, because it's probably also even a power dynamic in that relationship, and something is off there.
Yes. And to go back to what you said earlier, it is very dangerous, and it's not metaphorical. I was actually kidnapped at 22 years old because I fell in love with with the narcissist. And what narcissists do is they love bomb you. I didn't know this until really about 4 years ago that I was raised by a narcissist. My mother is a narcissist. So imagine being given life and being raised by someone, all you know is their cruelty. You don't know any other form of life. So when I started going out into the dating world, I fell madly in love with this man who I met at a personal development seminar, by the way. So it's not like I met him at a random bar. He wasn't a random stranger. He was surrounded by all these other high-level successful speakers, and he had a lot going on for himself. And within the first 90 days, the narcissists do something called love bombing. So he did everything in his power to make me feel so loved and so cherished, and like I was his priority in his world, and very quickly started taking that away from me and giving me crumbs so that I would become addicted. And that's what happens. So these women that you're talking about is who I was as well. We are addicted. Just like heroin addicts need to go to rehab, women like us and men who have so much trauma in their life, but we don't know it's trauma, it's just life, right? Like we don't know any better because we have no comparison. We can get stuck in these certain situations. And for 2 years, this man isolated me from my family, took over my finances, left me literally bankrupt. I had to file bankruptcy at 25 years old. And because he had taken over my finances, he stopped paying my phone bill, and I lost contact with everyone on that phone. So I have a new phone number that hardly anybody has access to. So and I was one of the lucky ones. And by that, I mean, I was able to get out. I was able to rehab myself, both my brain, my body. I was clinically depressed for about 8 months. And the reason I say I'm one of the lucky ones is because I have several friends who have been through similar situations and have been physically abused and almost killed. And we have seen women in the media who have been unalived. So what we're talking about here, I don't take this work lightly, because I literally have opportunities to save lives. And I feel like that is my soul's purpose on this planet. That's why I speak so strongly on this topic, because it's not just like, oh, let's meet Prince Charming. No. Our patterns around love could either bring us pure, absolute, radiant joy when we've healed what doesn't serve us anymore. But if we continue to just live a pattern that we don't know we have, we literally can live hell on earth.
Yeah. Wow. That gave me goosebumps, first of all. And second of all, thank you so much for sharing about that openly, because it must have been really hard for you to go through. I'm sorry you had to go through that. But on the flip side, you did actually come out of that so much stronger, and you have all of this knowledge that you're sharing with the world, and you have the empathy as well. That's what I can see clearly, and the passion. Really, that's so inspiring, because, I talk about a lot of different topics on this show. A lot of that is like, our self-work. But when it comes to romantic relationships, obviously the self-work is even more important, because you're involving somebody else in your life, right? And I guess before you even think about getting into any sort of romantic relationship, that self-work is even more important. And going back to the question, right? We were talking about the different dynamics, the different sort of issues, and I guess we were trying to see how it could unfold in different ways and what people can do. So we've covered the problematic part of it. Like some things might go wrong. There are things that you just don't notice in yourself, and so much more. But what would you recommend to be some of the things that people can keep an eye out for and try, especially when it comes to that part of untangling whatever it is that's going on, because the dynamics in the relationship should be healthy for us to, like you said, feel joy.
Yes.
To improve our happiness. But there's just so many different patterns and dynamics that we mentioned, and there are so many more, right? Because we just mentioned probably like 2-3 different kinds of unhealthy ones, but there are just so many other kinds of toxic dynamics So what should we start with? Because untangling this is probably going to be very different for different individuals. But what are some of the things that you think we can start with as humans to get ahead with the process?
Yeah. So the number one thing, especially when I'm working with the women, I specifically work with women who are single and then women who are in relationships. And then I work with both parties in the couple. And I also work with same-sex couples. But we'll get into that later. But the main element here for the women, especially the super successful executive women, which is what I work with. Okay. So by default, the women who are very successful in the corporate world or even as entrepreneurs, they have an energy that I call Athena mode. Athena is the badass. Okay. Athena gets stuff done. That is what we call in the frequency world, masculine energy. And we need her. Okay. Athena is amazing. Athena is represented in the Greek legacies as Ares' sister, and Ares is the god of war. She is the goddess of wisdom, and she also goes off to war. But what they also share in the legacy that a lot of people forget about Athena is that she died a virgin. She never took on a lover. So what we know from that energy is that we need Athena, our masculine energy, to get stuff done. Boom, boom, boom. That's awesome, right? Athena's the one that closes multi-million-dollar deals. She goes on stage, she kicks butt, she's amazing. The thing is, if we only live in the masculine energy as women in high functioning, whatever area we are, it is literally a formula for us to end up in the hospital with adrenal fatigue equals burnout. Okay. Our bodies were literally not designed to consistently go. This goes for both men and women, by the way. And whatever you identify with, this goes for human beings. But what's most important, specifically for women, our bodies are designed differently. And women need more sleep. We need more rest. And we need more opportunities to do things that spark joy. I'm going to repeat that. We need more opportunities to do things that spark joy for the sake of joy. Not, I'm going to do this while. No multitasking. If you're going to go out in nature, enjoy nature. Go sit and watch and go to the beach and feel the waves crashing onto your feet. Not go out there and be like, oh, I'm going to pick up a book at the same time. Okay. Can we multitask? Yeah, we're amazing at it. But when it comes to the society of getting stuff done, the joy that we feel, particularly as women, has been lost when we do everything for everyone else. So the number one thing in order, and this goes for everyone, in order for someone to truly call in someone else that's happy and healthy, they themselves need to be happy and healthy and happy being single. So they have a healthy schedule of the things that they do. Also, there's another little side pattern there, which is one of the ones that you brought up earlier. For people who are really good at being single all the time and who don't really bring in partners, there's actually a fear there. It's called part personality. We all have part personalities. This is what bipolar disorder is. Some of us just show it outside and some of us keep it inside, but we all have part personalities. This is what I help my clients with. And the women who are really good at being so independent yet want a partner, we need to actually help them understand and break the fear and the pattern that they will lose their independence when the partner comes in. So we need to actually address that and be like, how can you heighten your independence when the partner comes in? How can you have that partner be such a support for you and them, and for you to each other, enhance your independence as opposed to losing it? So there are several little threads, I call them, that are part of different patterns, and it all shows up differently to different people, which is why it's important to work with someone for at least 2 to 3 sessions before we tap into what their patterns are, because everyone has different patterns and different blueprints. And it doesn't have to be trauma, just blueprints. There's nothing wrong with the blueprint. It just is what it is. That doesn't mean that we don't address it and make it better. We just excel.
Wow. I feel like you were talking to me. I was like, thank you, Emmy.
You're welcome, Lou. I got your back.
Yeah, it's like, thank you so much. Because I was like, I feel seen. That's exactly how I feel. Like, I'm the opposite. As I said, I have a friend who's never single. I'm the complete opposite of her. And I'm just like, I'm great. But recently, I started reading up on attachment styles because one of my really good friends, she was kind of saying, hey Lou, I think you really should look into this, work on yourself, because we talk a lot about, self-development, personal self-development, and we were just talking about different aspects. And previously we talked a lot about, professional development. And recently it's like a new theme. We started talking about life, and she was recommending me to look into attachment styles because it can actually help to navigate through different dynamics, especially friendships, because friends are so important to me and I want to nurture healthy friendships. And I was kind of like talking to her about, like, I feel like I'm being a little bit anxious when it comes to this friendship. And she was like, oh, you know what? You should look into attachment styles. Long story short, that's how I got into it. But attachment style is such a big thing in romantic relationships, right? Like, I don't know why, but it's just like popping up on, my YouTube quite a bit lately. And, at LMSL, we're also developing a course about attachment. It's not about happiness at the moment, but it's about personal resilience. That's another story, though. But then that got me to really read up on this topic a bit more. Like, I've been reading about that a lot. I'm even listening to the audiobook Attached, which is a pretty famous book. And we talked about this before we started, right? So I wanted to talk to you about this topic because it's such a common thing. Everyone's talking about it. So I wonder what your take on it is, because, attachment styles, everyone's saying is super important. You need to work through it to build, secure attachment styles and, have fulfilling relationships. But I think you thought otherwise. You thought this is probably not that important and you have something else in mind. So I wonder what it is.
Yeah. So I think this idea of the attachment styles, I'm glad it's going viral, by the way. But there are some people are missing the point, and that's where it gets dangerous. I'm going to tell you which part is dangerous. So when people, because they misunderstand what the purpose of it is, that's why it's dangerous. Because the author's initial intent was not what people are using it for. That's why I'm bringing it up. It's a model. It's a good model if people know how to work through it. The problem is that as people read these chapters and they find something that they associate with, then they say, oh, I am anxious attachment. I am avoidant attachment. I am this. So now they are creating identifiers of like, I am this. And when you say I am, that's it. That's your identity. And creating identity based off of an attachment style is very dangerous. That's not the intent. The intent was to tell you what pattern you have. So if I can tell you, like, you know what, I have a pattern of forgetting to lock the door, versus, you know what, I just never lock the door. Different, right? Talking about a pattern, and this is why it's so different. Patterns can be broken. Identities cannot. I'm going to repeat that. Patterns can be broken. Identities cannot. Okay? When someone chooses to step into a new identity, they literally have to have their entire life crumble before them. This is where a breakdown comes before a breakthrough. So identities can shift, but they have to be on purpose. Okay? Identities can shift, but they have to be on purpose. And this is why I call upon the model. And I think the initial authors are doing their best to clarify what they're bringing up, but people have been taking it out of context, and that's where it's become dangerous. It's not an identity game. It's not, people are treating it as a test where you go and read a chapter and kind of like a Myers-Briggs. That's the problem. People are like, oh, well, I am ENFJ. I'm like, oh, I'm cultivating. I'm this. That's not what it's for, people. No, 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 no.
I was trying to stifle my laugh so you could finish the sentence. It's hilarious. Yeah, that's a good one. I really agree with that, because you know what? When I was first introduced to it, my friend really emphasized that, oh, Lou, I think you could be anxious avoidance. I don't remember what word she used, and I was like, oh, really? What does that mean? And she's like, I honestly don't remember how she defined my attachment style. But what I noticed when I started reading the book and reading up on this topic was I don't think I am any kind of those attachment. I have a tendency to be X in this friendship and Y in the other friendship, but I didn't know why. And then in the book, there was this sentence that really stuck with me. It's something along the line of we feel a certain way if our needs are not met. Something along that line. So then when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's why. In this friendship, that friend is really communicative, really on time, really caring, giving me a lot of compliments, asking me to, questions to challenge myself. I feel secure. Even if we don't talk for a week, I feel secure in that friendship. On the other hand, there's another friendship. The chemistry is great, but they leave me hanging. They don't tell me the plans. They are so spontaneous that it's kind of affecting me because I'm a planner. So that causes anxiety. And so I feel anxious in that. So I have anxious attachment in that particular friendship. So then when I saw that in my brain, this is what went on in my brain. I don't have one particular attachment style. I could actually be really secure in certain scenarios and really anxious in others and avoided in others. So then to me, it's kind of like you need to read into what's going on in that particular relationship, because yes, I can work on becoming a more secure person and, improve my attachment style in general so that I become like I have secure attachment with people. But I need to understand what it is that caused all of these triggers, because it's not like I just became anxious in this particular friendship for no reason and I'm secure in the other friendship for no reason. There's going to be something, and it's about me. It's about them and me. So then when I read that and when you said it, I was like, you know what? That's true. It's not one thing that's defining who we are. It's like identifying the tendencies, the patterns in what we're doing and translating that into the particular relationship. Because I think even when it comes to looking for partners, and I mean, I really don't have much experience in this area because like I'm just I'm really enjoying my single life. But when we do, I'm assuming it'll be something along the same line. We really need to know the other person and how that person makes you feel to address all these different kinds of issues. Because maybe you find someone you're just like so secure with them because they meet the exact needs that you need in that particular context. Or it could be the other way around, like they just have their own way of dealing with you that makes you feel anxious, and you need to address that if you truly want to work towards that partnership. And I truly don't know much about this topic, but that's my interpretation. So what are your thoughts?
No, I love it. You're spot on, because relationships are relationships as a whole, right? Whether they're friendships, whether they're business, whether they're romantic, right? Romantic has extra few caveats, obviously. But when I work with my clients, what we first start addressing is their friendships and their business relationships, not the romantic. With the romantic is the last one. Because what happens is if someone doesn't have boundaries at all in business or friendships, guess what? They're going to accidentally bring in someone who loves that they don't have boundaries and romantically, and they're going to be someone that takes advantage of them. So that's why we have to address the friendship and the business relationships first. And you're spot on with everything that you just said and how it works. You're going to meet people out there that see my name and they're like, oh my God, Emmy is so mean. And then you have my clients who work with me and know me very well, and we have a secure space for healing and love, and they're like, oh my God, Emmy's the sweetest person on the planet. Guess what? They're both right, but they've got a different version of me on purpose, okay? I show up on purpose, and so do you. Not everyone is going to get all of you or even the best parts of you, sometimes on purpose, sometimes on accident, okay? What we're trying to do is how do you show up with yourself on purpose most of the time. And not everyone deserves the loving, vulnerable side of me. The version that my husband knows, no one else on the planet knows. He's the only person that gets to see and feel and know all of my different multiple personalities, the quirky side, the goofy side, the emotional side, the one that falls apart when she can't find the toothpaste side. Like all of those, right? Versus my business clients get a different version of me and my friends get a different version of me. Is this us pretending to be different people? No. We just have different versions that must show up depending on the context of safety and vulnerability. And there are also people out there who share too much too soon with complete strangers. And then we all go, ooh, that's another pattern, right? And blueprint. So like there are all these different versions of us, and what you're describing and how you're addressing this in your friendships is pretty good. Also very important. This is very important. This is kind of a tangent here, but it's going to apply directly to what you're talking about with the friendships. And I want the audience to know, the more self-work you do and the more love you give to yourself, and the more you realize just how grateful you are for love and recognizing the blessings that you have in your life, the more friendships you're going to lose. Stay with me for a second. Not all friendships are meant to last a lifetime. And sometimes when we meet someone, we meet them in misery. And that's why the phrase misery loves company works so well. But sometimes when you do this work, not sometimes, when you do this work and you get out of that choosing to live in misery and your friend hasn't done the work and they're still in misery, you two are going to clash. You're not going to have a lot in common anymore. You're going to realize like, what's wrong? How do we go back to that friendship and the chemistry? You're not meant to, my lovely. You're meant to. And guess what? The friendship heartbreaks can hurt just as bad as romantic heartbreaks, but it's okay. You're going to be okay. I want you to know there's nothing wrong with you. The friendship needs to end, and it's okay for you to grieve that friendship and also choose to let it go in a loving way, because now that you are in a new frequency, you're going to attract people who are on that new frequency and the new thoughts and the new being. So try not to go down the misery loves company path. And sometimes that's every friendship that we create happens in that chapter or season of our life for a reason. But even in Mother Nature, seasons change at least 4 times a year. So we have to be compassionate with ourselves with when things start and end in a natural way, and not try to hold on to things when they are past their expiration date.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, because I've been there, Emmy. I'm happy to report I've been there. I don't regret it. It's I've got actually a few ones that ended not long ago, and initially it broke my heart. Just like you said, it's probably it was actually worse than a heartbreak. It took so long to get over, because you know what, like I bared my soul to them. I shared every single part of my life to them, the good, the bad, the ugly, and I trusted them enough to tell them about my pain, my trauma, my insecurities. And to a certain point, some of them used these things against me. And I guess that's what made me realize I didn't need them in my life, because I only need people that would know about these things that aren't pretty, but stuck with me anyway and would never use them against me. So then I learned that, oh, you know what? I let go of those friendships for a reason, and it's for the best. And same with romantic relationships. Like it hurts sometimes to let go, but it's necessary. And sometimes, like you said, misery loves company. I've been thinking about that a lot, because I've been reflecting on, past friendships and relationships. And I was kind of like, I spent a lot of time with these people. And I didn't realize it back then, but it was just because I needed company, not because I needed growth or, because I needed their energy to lift me up. It was more like, let's stay low together. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like, okay, let's just like be here comfortable together so we can numb ourselves rather than actually work on ourselves and be better. And that's okay. That was needed in that period, because to me, it's like, well, it doesn't really matter. You can think about what you did wrong and just, keep going with that over and over again and regret it, or you can just look at that as a lesson. So to me, well, those are good lessons. And I really love that you said, your new frequency will attract new people. I love that. Totally relate with that. And that's what I'm actively working on. And hopefully our audience can take something from that too. Okay, so we've talked about attachment and like the misconception that people get. Hopefully, we've helped our audience, if they know about attachment styles, to actually look at it in a more healthy and effective way. But one of the key things that I learned when it comes to attachment styles, whether we look at it in the right way or in the wrong way, and this applies to romantic relationships in general, would be the communication part of it, because a lot of the times we know what the issues are, but we don't talk about it. So then the next question is the golden question, communication. This applies to all relationships, isn't it? And especially in business. So we have this really big tool that everyone can use, but not everyone knows how to use it. So how do we maintain effective communication to have a healthy romantic relationship and to elevate ourselves and to boost our happiness? Because it's so important and it's constant work as well. I just want to add that in, because it's not like you communicate about that once and it's done. I think it's actually like, you never stop communicating, especially if you want to build and maintain that happy, healthy romantic relationship.
Agreed. So this is the part that we can get into a little bit more specific. So when it comes to cisgender heterosexual relationships, and it's very important, I want to be as clear as possible with how I identify some of these elements. So specifically with the cisgender heterosexual relationships between a man and a woman, it's important for them to understand that their brains are not designed the same. Biologically, we're not the same. Our bodies are not the same. That doesn't mean good or bad. It's just a fact. Okay, we're not designed the same. And what that means is that different parts of our brains light up at different times. And the needs that men need versus the needs that women need are very, very different. So when we try to coexist in a living space, there can be a lot of unintentional disrespect or unintentional hurt. That's just by default, okay? One of the number one things I like to teach my couples is ask curious questions before you attack, okay? So we very often can make an assumption of, my husband left the glass on the table again, right? And he left it on the table, and I haven't ever brought this up with him, but like, I already washed all the dishes, or I already did whatever X, Y, and Z, and he left that there again, and he did it just to piss me off. Okay, that's the narrative that goes on in a lot of people's minds, and this goes vice versa, by the way, for any other significant person. So we might think, so and so did this just to piss me off, right? Their spouse. And what happens is we are then reacting instead of taking a step back and asking curious questions. So what I like to teach my clients is, instead of saying, we have to remember we are not parents, okay? We are not parenting our adult spouse. Very important. You are not mother and you are not father. Very important, okay? So instead of accusing and telling someone, hey, grab the glass, put the glass in the sink, that's a very motherly thing to do to a spouse, and it will cause a lot of other issues. But if it's an ongoing thing, it will cause a lot of tension, and it will create, at a minimum, a lack of sex drive in the couple. So that's why a lot of couples stop having sex, first of all, right? Because there's a lot of unnecessary criticism. But so that's what I suggest you don't do. Let me give you a tool of how to go about that, because you're probably thinking, yeah, Emmy, I know that all that sounds good, but you don't understand. I can hear you. I know. Listen up. Hold on. So this is what you bring up instead, okay? It's not about sucking it up, Buttercup, and not bringing it up. If there's something bothering you, yes, bring it up. But I'm going to show you how to bring it up in a way where you actually get results and you have beautiful communication. So you can ask your spouse, hey, honey, can I ask you something? Be like, yeah. Is there a reason you left your cup here on the table? I was thinking of moving it, but I won't move it if you needed it for something. And your spouse will either respond, oh yeah, I left it there because I'm about to serve myself some juice in about 10 minutes and I wanted it to be handy. Or, you know what? No, I just forgot. Okay, perfect. So in one scenario, you know that they're going to get some juice, so leave it there. And they say, oh, you know what? You just forgot. Perfect. So now you take it to step 2 and you say, oh, honey, is it okay if we start putting the glass in in the dishwasher after you use it, it'll help me out a lot. And it makes me feel really loved when I leave the kitchen clean like this, or when we leave it clean like this. It kind of stays like that till morning, because or else I'm thinking about it and just so many other things in my head. Is that something that you can do for me? A healthy spouse will say, yeah, sure, of course. Now that I know that it means something to you, absolutely, I can do that. So now, and there's a sense of gratitude. So you say thank you to each other, kiss, and you can actually sleep through the night. I can't tell you how many fights happen over a single cup or a single sock. It seems like it's a single opportunity, but it's not. What happens is it's a consistent feeling of disrespect or consistent feeling of lack of love, because we're not taught how to correctly communicate with our spouses. But when it comes to corporate world, I mean, we have entire trainings in HR of how to talk to our either superiors or our peers or the people that we manage, but somehow we're just supposed to know it when it comes to our romantic partners. So no, you're not just supposed to know it. There's trainings for this. I want you to know, cut yourself some slack. If you're struggling in this area, it's okay. It can be better. Just know that you're not just supposed to know it. It is not fair for us. We're not born just knowing how to communicate with someone else you're living with. So there's help out there. Don't you worry.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I love that, because, you know, I mentioned earlier in the beginning part of the podcast that it's so interesting when you mentioned we don't have training in this area. That's so true. We do training in every single other aspect in life, and no one teaches you how to navigate a relationship and how to get into one in a healthy way, how to maintain it in a healthy way. And there's also this really big thing of power dynamics. And this is what my girlfriend and I also talked about yesterday. And I really want to relate the point you just made with this, because a lot of the times we think that this respect, this mutual respect, should be there. We assume, or we just say, you know what, a healthy relationship, you gotta have mutual respect. But no, sometimes, and this is what I've noticed, there's like a certain power dynamic in some relationships. For example, I noticed from one of the friends that I was hanging out with that the guy in the couple is much older. So, well, I'm older. I know better than you. You should listen to me. And there's, unfortunately, to me, it sounded like there's a bit of mansplaining there. And this is the power dynamic number one. It's pretty common. But the other way around also exists, right? Like sometimes, the lady in the couple would be a bit older. So she's like, oh, yeah, you don't know about this. Let me teach you, or let me tell you. It's also a power dynamic. And there's so many other kinds of power dynamics to navigate. So yes, we do need to have effective, healthy communication to build, to maintain a happy and healthy functioning relationship with our partner. But what about the power dynamics? Because sure, like they will tell you, Emmy, I hear you. I understand. We'll work on our communication. But the underlying part of it, if the power dynamics are not understood or resolved, then the communication might be just really superficial. Like, okay, I'll say the thing that Emmy suggested, but I still think I have the upper hand in the relationship, or the other person still has the upper hand in the relationship. And that's so unhealthy. Like that's a deeper issue, I think.
Right. And you're getting to a really important topic here, Lou, because this is one of the things where the very first thing, I'll walk you through how I work with my couples, and this will be a better way of how I explain this part. So when I'm working with a couple, it's a minimum of 90 days for us to go through everything that we need to address. That's the minimum. Okay. We start with the 90 days, nothing. So no individual sessions is ever going to serve them. The reason I need 90 days is because what I am assessing for in those first 90 days is there an underlying toxic pattern where their core beliefs are just, and their core values are completely different, and they shouldn't be together in the first place. Okay. That's the number one thing. And it's 50-50, by the way, with the couples I work with, it's 50-50. Half the time I will suggest after those 90 days where I can tell them, I know enough now after all the years of everything that you guys have been doing. And after seeing you navigate the world in these 90 days, with guidance and with tools, I can tell you this is something that is never going to be fixed, because you two are trying to put a square peg into a round hole. It just doesn't work. You don't belong together. And guess what, Lou? Some couples still say like, well, we're staying together no matter what because we said that when we got married and that's it. So I say, bye, have fun being miserable the rest of your life. Congratulations. It's everyone's choice, okay? So now that's element number one. Now the other 50% of the couples, where if I see that they don't have toxic underlying, because everybody has potential toxic underlying behaviors. So the behaviors can be potentially changed, okay? But it's the core values of who someone is that can't change. Okay, so if someone like your friend who's with this older gentleman who tries to push her down and tell her like, I can tell you that one's really wonky because it's not really like that. That's just his identity. And once he gets rid of her, he'll find another one. He's going to do the same thing over and over and over. He's found success in that. So he just keeps finding another victim. That's just how it works. Okay. Again, that's just a quick over the top assessment. It's not a full holistic assessment. So don't take that to heart. Anybody listening, this is just a quick example because I don't know any more details on that. So we're not saying that's what's happening with Lou's friend. So with the couples who are like bickering and haven't had a lot of sex, or they're really arguing about sex and somebody wants it more and somebody wants it less, what we're finding first is, to your point around power dynamics, what ends up happening is, especially when children are introduced to someone's in the couple's life, what ends up happening is if there is not a clear definition of who does what in the household and household chores, and it is evenly distributed amongst who is better at what and who has time for what and who chooses to take care of each other, then there's a full-on disaster, because 100% most of the work will fall on the woman by default. And here's what I'll add to this though. Most of the work falls on the women by default. Why? Because what ends up happening is that the woman says, oh, you're doing that bad. Let me just take care of it. And I know, ladies, you're listening. You might be thinking, no, Emmy, like he just does it bad on purpose. No, honey, baby. If he does it bad on purpose, it's because you've allowed for that to be the case. And because criticizing each other is not going to work, just plain and simple. But we are taught to criticize each other in order to change behavior. That's not how it works. That's just not how it works. It's not sustainable, okay? It'll work one off, but it's not sustainable. So if you can learn the tools to say, hey, honey, can I ask you for a favor? You know, I saw the sock outside the hamper and I've noticed it outside the hamper every day this week. Do you think there's a chance that we can put all the stuff inside the hamper and that way I don't have to worry about it? Now, it depends on what the partner's response is, right? If the partner is toxic and they're like, well, that's your fault, it's your responsibility, I don't have to worry about it, then we have some major issues there, right? But if the partner was completely unaware, which by the way, ladies, this is why it's important. And there is a book out there that I recommend by Alison Armstrong, and it's called Understanding the Development of Men, where it walks you through the male and female brain, which is very, very powerful. So I do recommend that for the audience. So you understand that the visual spectrum of the male and female is completely different. And we also know this, and it's not made up, by the way. We already know that men, okay, scientifically proven, see less colors on the spectrum than women do. Okay? Not only do they see less colors, they have a smaller visual profile. So they can't see the things out of the corner of their eyes as well as we do. So we are going to be annoyed by more things. Yes, we are. So how do we then manage our own annoyance and then notice, okay, how do I bring it up without attacking, but also having my needs met? And that's the balance, Lou. The balance is, how do I not just suck it up, but bring things up when it matters and when it counts? Because if we bring up every single quote thing that your spouse didn't do right, this goes for both sides. I see men criticize their women a lot. Like if a man comes in and let's say you made them a lovely dinner, or vice versa. Whoever cooked the dinner and the person comes in, they're like, oh, that smells good, and they try it. like, oh man, that tastes really, really bad. I don't know what you were thinking. That's going to break the other person's heart. I don't care who you are. Okay. So that's what I mean about the level of respect, of cherishing each other and doing things for each other on purpose. So I went on a long tangent there. I'll bring it back to you, Lou. Thanks.
No, I really love it. I think it's such an important thing to notice because you know what? We don't talk about this enough. So, whatever you have to share with us, I think is super important. I mean, I'm letting it sink in right now. I don't have anything to say for now, but what I do think is super important is we've covered all of these, like potential problematic areas that could happen in romantic relationships, power dynamics, misunderstanding of attachment styles, ineffective communications. So now let's bring it back because, it's time to ground us a little bit and give our audience something to take with them. We have two final questions, but I would actually like to combine them as one because I think this is a healthy part where we leave people on the high note. So we know all the issues, we know all the problems. You work with a lot of people. You've talked about how you worked through things with them. But I do think we need to ground ourselves back in ourselves because like you were saying, like you need to do a lot of self-work. This is what we mentioned earlier. I do believe as well that we need to do the self-work for our romantic relationships to be a happy, fulfilling, and long-lasting one. So my final question for you in this section would be, how can we as individuals cultivate this level of self-love? And what other kind of self-work do we need to do and should we start looking into doing or even trying doing it right now, so that we can cultivate and nurture and build that long-lasting, happy relationship that probably, most of us are thinking about. If we don't have one, then we're thinking about, building one. If we already have one, we would like to maintain it. So then let's start with that. Let's talk about that self-work and that self-love.
Yes. This one's going to be a little controversial, especially if it's taken out of context, but I'm going to say it and then we're going to work through it. Learn how to be selfish. Okay. What I mean by that is find the things or create the things that make you happy regardless of what it does for someone else. So especially for women, self-sacrifice is not the way to happiness. And too many women in this society sacrifice for their children, for their spouses, for their jobs, for everyone else. And they're the last ones to get any rest or any food or anything that they need. So what I mean by this in learning how to be selfish is what are the things that you need to do in order for your cup to overflow? And then from there, give to others. Is that yoga? Is that pottery? Is that pole dancing? Is that fishing? Is it anything else that makes you feel joy? And by the way, it has to be very unique to you. So we can sit here and tell you like, oh, go get a mani-pedi, your manicure and your pedicure. For me, mani-pedis are not about self-love. They're about normal grooming and maintenance. Okay. Me going to any yoga class? Absolutely not. There's only one kind of yoga class that will actually put me in that state of, oh my God, I'm so glad I came. And that is when I go to Yin Restorative because I do nothing other than just lay there and listen to the guidance of the yoga teacher. Okay, so sometimes we do things for the sake of working out, thinking that is self-love. Yes, it is a part of it, but working out and being athletic is different than you literally going on a walk and staring at a butterfly for 20 minutes and watching it and just being mesmerized by it. That is self-love. Going on a walk and power walking and watching your iWatch 24/7 and be like, okay, look, my heart rate went up. I'm sorry, honey, that wasn't part of self-love. That was you trying to be productive. So we have to stop being productive with the things that are supposed to just bring us joy. That's the key thing that I see, Lou, that is really messing with women in our society and what's hurting us and landing so many of us in the hospital. Because that's the number one sort of outside thing that people notice when people are stressed out, they'll just keep going until the body says, you know what, I'm shutting down. You're not shutting down for me, so I'm going to shut down for you. And they end up in the hospital. It's unfortunately, that's how many of us learn. And then that's when some people have recognitions of like, I need to live my life differently. And some people just keep doing the same thing over and over again. So everyone's level of balance is different, but we all need to find what are the things that light us up for the sake of joy, going back to my previous point earlier, not for the sake of productivity. And I can tell you right now, every time I have this conversation with my clients, they will give me a list of the things that they do for self-love. And I'm going to tell you, Lou, 99% of the things on those lists, on their original list that they send to me, is not about self-love. They think it's self-love, but it's being productive towards something else that they need to achieve. Happiness is not a goal. Happiness needs to be a part of an identity.
Yeah, that is so true. I couldn't agree more. And I think that's a mistake that I probably have made as well, because I think a lot of the times I'm like, oh, like such a nice day. I should go for a walk because I enjoy the nice day. But then, I go out, I'm like, oh, I really don't feel like walking. Probably just want to sit down and enjoy the sun. And then sometimes I feel guilty and I'm like, why am I feeling guilty? That's it. Because I wasn't being productive. And I was like, wow, I have so much guilt in me when I'm just enjoying life. That's so sad. I need to work on that.
Spot on, Lou. You are describing what 99% of the women that I work with is around how do we address that guilt. And guess what, ladies, hearing this in the audience, guilt in women is all patriarchy. Yay! As if they don't have anything else on the table. It all comes from patriarchy because we are meant to be productive, because we were meant to breed. Our entire purpose was to continue the livelihood of the species. And we know we have a lot more to offer than that. So next time you're feeling guilty, you can slap yourself a little bit on the face and be like, no, I'm not allowing the patriarchy to take away me and sitting here enjoying the sunshine just because it feels so good.
Yeah. Next time I'll be like, I like to do this to myself, like, there. Calm down. It's okay. Enjoy.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with enjoying life. Just there. Enjoy.
Yeah.
I normally do that. Just self-soothe, like I don't know what it was, but yeah, I think we all know what it is. It's it's a bigger thing and it takes some time to digest. But yeah, I think this really it's like societal pressure, I guess, for women to be more, do more, have it all. And this is trauma as well. And I've talked about it quite a bit with my colleagues and some of the co-hosts on the show. And we talked about this previously because I visited my family recently and I was like, wow, they asked me to do everything, but they don't really ask me about what I want to do. You know what? I just want to sit in the sun and read. Is that okay? I don't want to get married. I don't want to bring kids into life right now. All I want to do is just to enjoy life with no anxiety in the sun, read a book. And that's my conclusion of the day. It's on the topic of self-love. But let's talk about something more practical now. So we've talked a lot about, the science of relationships, happy, healthy, romantic relationships, all the different aspects of it. And we also covered a little bit of self-love, which is a really big part of it. Self-work, super huge part of it. So because the topic today is actually about understanding the dynamics of romantic relationship, to get practical, I wonder what you actually do, Emmy, because I'm pretty sure our audience is now probably, curious because, you've talked a lot about your experience. You seem like you're in a very happy relationship and you're super, fulfilled in that relationship. What is a practice that you do to understand the dynamics of romantic relationships so that you can actually, nurture that happy, healthy, long-lasting romantic relationship?
Yeah, well, Lou, this is going to go back to the elements that we were talking about before. Is the only way I can nurture my relationship is for me to nurture myself first. My relationship cannot be nurtured unless I'm already full of love myself in order to share that with my partner. And what that means is I have to be selfish. So I make it a point. I do daily meditation in the state of gratitude. Okay, so what can you list out? You can either do a journal entry where you list out the things that you're grateful for on a daily basis. You do a short meditation where you literally choose to see the goodness in everything that's happening around you. Okay, those are some of the tiny little things that you can do on a daily basis. And if you want to go deeper, there's a lot that you can do either with a therapist or a coach or a life coach or a love coach, whatever it is that you feel called to work with somebody who can help you rewire certain blueprints. So they can call you out on your not so good stuff. And so that you can have another person's perspective where they're like, am I right in thinking this way? Or was this person messed up? Because you need to know when you have an interaction with someone, are they the ones bringing in the red flags, or do you have the red flags? Do you need the adjustment in the blueprint? So the number one thing is learning what are the things that make you and your brain happy. Okay. How can you consciously go on a daily basis as much as possible, because this is not going to work every single day. Okay. Where you are helping your brain. And this is another element that we haven't talked about, but this is why I bring up Dr. Daniel Amen a lot, and I'm going to bring him up again here. There are certain supplements that help our brain to boost serotonin and oxytocin. Okay. I'll give you one as an example for myself. And this is one that a lot of people don't know about, but women listening specifically listen to this part. So for a really long time, for the last 7 years, I was living in the middle of the US in a state called Nebraska. Well, it turns out in Nebraska, you get about 6 months of winter, which is not ideal. So guess what? I wasn't going outside, not even in the summertime, because I was on Zoom calls with my clients. So what happens is I was severely fatigued. And I was like, what is going on? So I went to go get my blood drawn, and turns out that I was severely low on vitamin D. It's kind of like a duh thing, right? Well, I learned there that vitamin D is not a vitamin. It is a hormone. Okay. So I started supplementing that, and guess what? In 2 weeks, I was back to my quote unquote normal self. So these are things that I want you to know, that it's not just willpower. Do not rely on just your willpower. If you're not feeling okay, it could be a chemical imbalance, maybe a hormone that is off specifically for women. You're not getting enough sun. You're not getting the right nutrients or the right food. And if you're not getting the right love for yourself or from others, then everything's going to be a disaster. So I want you to know that there are certain elements there that we can address that are practical, so that you know that you're not alone. Okay. And there are not only tools and techniques that you can implement that you can get from experts, but there are also things to start with for free. So we all love TikTok and YouTube, okay? There's a lot of great information on TikTok University and on YouTube. And I already gave you several of the authors that I think that I would recommend. Dr. Daniel Amen. There's another one, Dr. Bruce Lipton on the biology of belief, that I recommend you follow. So start there with the free stuff and see what YouTube shows you for other recommended items, for you to start seeing who do you resonate with, who feels right in your heart, because we have to start with the practice of gratitude. But sometimes gratitude's going to be really freaking hard when we've been, let's say, in the company of misery for a while. Like I did. I lived with depression for 15 years, but nobody knew it. I had a very good false mask for society. And internally, it was all a disaster. And this goes into other elements that we can talk about at another time around ADHD and autism, which I recently found out I'm on the spectrum. So there are a lot of elements that will come into how your brain works. And the more you learn about your own brain, the more you can help your brain turn into create superpowers instead of disabilities. And I'll leave it there for now, Lou, and you can go from there.
Yeah, there's just so much to try, and so much you can try, right? we asked you for one practice, and I guess you gave us several. But I really like the fact that you talked about the gratitude list at the beginning, and you really anchor in the positive sides of things, and to unpack whether you see the red flags in others or you see the red flags in yourself, because that's what I realize is so important. A lot of the time you're triggered and you're annoyed at something, not because of what the person did, but because of what it's actually brought out in you. You're like, oh, am I actually this? And that is so important, because that helps us to understand ourselves, and then in turn understand the romantic relationships, right? Because I can probably talk about this in even the friendship aspect. Like, if my friend said something that made me feel upset, is it because of what they said, or is it because of how I feel? There were two very different things, because a lot of the times the intention of what people say would be good, especially if you've known this friend for a long time. Chances are they're not trying to put you down. They're trying to help you to be better, but then you're just triggered because you know that is exactly what you need to work on. So that's kind of like the interesting part for me. And I think it's also important to navigate through all of this, because you pointed out so many different benefits to doing that. But I guess for women, this busy species that gets so much to do and have so much to do, when would be a good time to do this? When should we put aside time to work on this?
Working on ourselves is going to be a daily thing, but at a minimum once a week, where it's a conscious practice where you're saying, I'm doing this just for me. I'm doing this. No one else has to be involved. And this is particularly important for moms listening, because you might be thinking like, but Emmy, you don't understand. Like, my kids need me. Yeah, they do. But but they need you healthy. Okay. So especially for moms, I want you to know that there are people out there that love you, that would absolutely babysit your kids for half an hour or an hour. But you need to learn how to trust yourself to let them be with that person. Okay. So it is very important for us to do as much as possible on a daily basis, even if it's just 5 minutes of saying, I choose to see the magical blessings in my life today. And that's how I choose to live my day. Beautiful. And you're moving forward, right? And that will start retriggering or retraining your mind to look at what are the beautiful things in life versus what are the horrible things. So here's another practical thing that I can share with the audience is, how much of the news are you consuming on a daily basis? Okay. It is scientifically proven that if you start your day with the news and end with the news, you're going to have a miserable life because the news needs to sensationalize. So if you start off with all of the horrible things going on the planet, and you end your day with all the horrible things going on the planet, your brain doesn't know the difference between what you're seeing on screen versus what you're reading versus what is real life. So you are going to live in a constant state of anxiety. So I'm not saying be ignorant to the world. You can find out what's happening, but especially in the morning, set yourself up for success for what is going right in your life, and write those things down and what you're grateful for, and go find the accounts on TikTok and other places that are showing what good things are happening on the planet. And especially when you're going to bed at night, you want the last visuals to be something that your body either feels neutral about or happy about. I'm gonna repeat that. You need your body to be either neutral about it or happy about it. If you're watching a show that you think is cool, give you an example. There's a show on Netflix called How to Get Away with Murder, which is incredible. Okay. Absolutely incredible cast, incredible plot, phenomenal. But it's not so good for my nervous system or your nervous system. Okay. Because it sets you up for success in your brain for all the things that could go wrong and all the things that could hurt you. So this is very important for you to start taking conscious actions of what are you consuming. This is one of my favorite phrases that I tell my clients. What you consume consumes you. And I'm not talking about food.
Wow, that hits really hard. I couldn't agree more. I love that. That reminds me of this show that John Krasinski started in the pandemic called Some Good News. I don't know if you know about that one, but it was so good. I miss it so much. I was like, I need this in my life. I don't need the news, But yeah, totally. I think it's a conscious decision to identify these good channels and these good people and these good shows that would, bring the feel good chemical into your brain. And of course, it's good to stay updated, but probably not first thing in the morning for sure. So let's leave it at that. And now let's go into some questions from our audience. We had several questions submitted, but I think we've covered most of it. So there's only one question, and I would love to know your answer about this question too, is how can women identify and heal old wounds from past relationships and experiences that may be preventing them from feeling ready for love?
How can they identify them? So this is where it gets a little bit tricky, right? Because by default, we don't know our own self-limiting beliefs. And that's because they're unconscious. So by default, you won't be able to work on them on your own. And that's the truth of the matter. You're going to need to work with an expert, therapist, or a coach, or someone else. So I do recommend that you start either listening to accounts that talk about some of these things, and you might associate with some of those things, maybe even with the book attached, and see where you start feeling sort of on the map, let's call it. But true identification can only happen from an expert. And I'm not saying that like to go, sign up with my stuff. Go sign up with anyone else that is local and people that you resonate with, okay? Who do you feel safe with? Who do you feel seen and heard and vulnerable with? And that's going to be step number one, because we can't identify our own blueprints. Just plain and simple. We can't see the label of the nutrition facts if we're inside the bottle. We're blind to it, right? So we need someone else who's an expert in being able to help us with that. There are several books around how to identify if you're potentially in a dangerous situation with a person and potentially some red flags. So I will recommend that book. And that book is called Psychopath Free. And the reason I bring that book up is because too often women stay in relationships, and to your point, Lou, earlier, will justify a person's behavior even when they know they're being treated like shit. They will have to justify their behavior because the ego needs to justify behavior or else it goes insane. So often we know that something doesn't feel good, but we're like, oh, but he was really tired. Oh, but he was really busy. Oh, but blah, blah, blah. Okay. So that's really the only book I can recommend on that in terms of identifying someone else's red flags, and then see if you identify yourself in that, so that you can start sort of figuring out which way to move forward. And that's where it gets really tricky, because I wish I could tell you, oh, you know what, just go and take this assessment, and maybe one day I will be the person to create that. At the moment, that assessment doesn't quite exist yet. Not that I have come across, although if you're already in a relationship and want some resources around couples and assessments that they've already done, the Gottman Institute is phenomenal. When it comes to marriage and healthy couples, I definitely recommend them and a lot of their resources. Again, anytime we do something where it's just click, 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 or a few things here and there, be careful with any assessment where you just answered a few questions, be like, oh, I'm this. No. There's a lot more, okay? Know that that's just the beginning, something superficial to get you started so that you can work eventually, if you feel like you're on the right path, with an expert. And maybe that expert is a book. Maybe what you need is a book that you come across. It doesn't have to be something else that you do. I will tell you though, in any area of our lives that we want to become experts in, which I wanted to become an expert in love life because I wanted to have a healthy love life. That's the only reason. And then it turns out other women wanted to know as well. I was like, oh, awesome. Okay, cool. When it comes to life, we know that we need to spend either a lot of time or a lot of money in certain area for us to get really good at something. Okay? You want to master the violin? It's not going to happen if you take a 15-minute class. So I will ask you, how long is it going to take you to master relationships if you spend 15 minutes a year? that's where we have to have a better, more viable information, how we choose to live our life. Most people want to be really good at relationships and be in an amazing relationship, but spend 15 minutes working on it in their year. It doesn't work, right? So if you want to master a certain area, whatever it is in your life, you're going to need to dedicate time, money, and effort to it. Whatever it is. I don't care what topic in your life that is. Can be something completely different from relationships, but it needs to be addressed with someone that is at least a chapter ahead of you. That's what I do recommend, is find someone who already has the results that you want and ask for their advice. Don't ask for people who don't have the results that you want yet, especially if they're not experts in the field. That's my take on that, and it might be very different from someone else's, but I can tell you that's the results I got because I decided to seek out experts and pay for that learning. And instead of me having to continue to be in pain and figuring it out just from experience on my own, because trust me, I would have figured it out eventually, but it would have taken me another 20, 25 years.
Yeah. Totally. I totally agree with that. I think that's a really great reminder to all of us, because it's what you invest your time and money and effort into, right? We can invest in the wrong thing all the time. And, it's good to redirect that attention into what we actually want to work on. And to the audience asking that question, I guess, just like you said, no one's going to be able to help them as well as an actual expert to help them unpack whatever that's going on. Sure, we can do the self-work, we can do the research, we can read books, we can, relate to things, but we won't know if that's actually correct because, sometimes we tell ourselves what we want to hear too. So totally agree with you. Like we just gotta really put our money where it's worth and just really invest in that. And especially our time, because if we're like, I want to change my life, but I'm going to do the same thing every day anyway, not going to work. So yeah, really love that. And I think even though the topic of today was truly around understanding the dynamics of romantic relationships and how it affects happiness, we actually cover so much more than that. And I really love your energy, Emmy. I don't know, it's a Monday morning here and I feel really inspired. So I truly thank you for that and for being here. But before we let you go, there's open mic. It's your platform to talk about anything you're passionate about. It could be something that's completely unrelated to the topic, or it could be your chance to talk about your work. So take it away.
Awesome. I love it. So there are a lot of different opportunities for anyone who resonated with anything in the messaging today. So if you want to learn more about that, feel free to check out Soulmate Love University. And I'm happy to help you out, whether you're a single woman or you're in a relationship and you want to learn more about how to either fix something that you feel like is broken or how to magnify something that isn't quite exactly where you want it. Because the truth of the matter is that we all have things that we need to work on. There's no such thing as perfection. But I will tell you this, and I'm gonna leave you. I'll tell you a little bit more about how you can work with me. I have a retreat coming up in Costa Rica in December. So if you wanna sign up for that, feel free to reach out again at Soulmate Love University and send my team a message, and we can send you some more details on that. The details are still being worked out on the actual dates and where we're staying, but I can tell you it's going to be an immersion of love for yourself, for you to be able to learn how to become magnetic to soulmate love. Okay, I'm very picky about that word. I make sure that the people who come across my energy and my feed and my messaging is around soulmate love, not just any kind of love. And I want to leave you with this message because there's a lot of miscommunication out in the world around what this means or how this is supposed to go about. There is no such thing as perfection. Okay, you're not perfect. I'm not perfect. There's no one perfect on the planet. But there is such a thing as a perfect match. Okay. And because there is such a thing as a perfect match, I don't want you to settle. Don't settle with anyone that feels like they're close enough to what you would want. Because I can tell you that the women I come across who settle in relationships and marry someone just because they think they're getting older and they should get married or whatever society rules has for them, live a pretty sad life. And that's one of my goals on the planet, is to create a love revolution where everyone knows that they do not have to settle for anything in life, whether it be business relationships, friendships, and especially not love. Because guess what? Life is way too short to settle for anything in life, much less in love, because you deserve true, healthy, incredible, joyous, cherishing love where you are spoiled every freaking day and where you get to spoil your person as well. Not because you have to, but because you want to.
Beautiful. That's such a beautiful message to close with. And as I said, the whole conversation has been so enlightening for me, especially this part. You touched my soul, definitely talk to me, because, I'm so big on happiness and well-being, and especially happiness on this show. You truly have helped me to look at happiness in a very different light. And to be honest, if I can leave the audience with anything, I'm a pessimist when it comes to romantic relationships. But today, Emmy has changed my perspective a little bit, and slowly it'll probably head towards that optimistic end of the spectrum. But I think, if anything, our audience today has definitely learned so much from you, Emmy, especially with your energy. I think we can all try and do something differently and bring more joy into our life by working on ourselves, cultivating that self-love, and eventually work on that romantic partnership that will add so much value to our lives, provided that it's the right one and the perfect match, just like you said. So thanks so much for being here, and have a great rest of your evening. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Lou, and congratulations. Welcome to the light side.
Love that. You've been listening to Sero Boost, the Happiness Science Insights podcast, produced by the Happiness Science Labs, a division of LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes are available from 10 life management perspectives and can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, and other podcasting apps available on your devices. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, share, and subscribe to our channel so that other people can find it and we can continue to provide quality content. More of our work can be found on our website at ha.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Lu Ngo. Thanks for tuning in.